Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the And Both podcast. My guest, Zara Hanawalt, is someone who's made it her mission to write the stories that so many of us are living but not always saying out loud. She is a freelance journalist and twin mom who has written for Vogue, Elle, Shape, Parents, Cosmo, Glamour, and the New York Times for Kids. Zara's work dives deep into the intersections of motherhood, culture, and women's health, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic where so many moms hit a collective breaking point. In our conversation today, she shares what it was like to parent toddlers through lockdown, how she built her career around the realities of motherhood, and why our current systems continue to gaslight moms into thinking they're not trying hard enough. She brings the same clarity, compassion, and insight to this conversation that she brings to every piece that she writes. She has a incredible wealth of knowledge and understanding about this, not only from the perspective of being a mom herself, but also being a journalist and incorporating research into her pieces. So this was a really great nitty-gritty and also high level opportunity to talk about some of these pieces that I think that we're only now trying to develop the language around or learning the language around so that we can speak to these issues and speak to solutions. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and here is Zara. Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. Hello and welcome to another episode of the And Both podcast. My guest today is Zara Hanawalt. Welcome, Zara.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I don't know that I've had a twin mom before on here. Maybe I have. I don't know. It's all I'm in that fog of like, yeah, as we were just talking about cold and flu season rocketing around the house still, although it's getting nicer out, but that's a tangent for another time. Will you tell everyone what you'd like them to know about you before we jump into things?
Sure. I am a twin mom, as you said, and I'm a freelance journalist. So I have written for outlets like the New York Times for Kids, Vogue, Elle, Shape, Parents, and many, many others. And I primarily cover motherhood, women's health, and culture.
Nice. So very, very pertinent to this space over here on the internet. How long have you done that for?
About 10 years.
Nice.
And I
And
have
how
not
did
been a mother that whole time, which is
yeah, the twins are how old?
they're 6.
Okay. So did you start freelance? I don't know much about journalism and how people get into the industry. So how did that
No.
start?
So freelancing was always kind of the eventual goal for me. I went full-time freelance when my kids were born. I was at a full-time job up until I was like 36 weeks pregnant, 34 weeks, something like that. And I left. I was home with them until they were like 5 months old. And then I slowly transitioned back into freelance work.
That's cool. And how in the freelance space, do you have you have, like, a specialty, right, that you just said, like motherhood and parenting and things like that.
Mhm.
How have you noticed changes sort of across in that industry given the last 5, 6 years, I would say?
Absolutely. I mean, things are always shifting. The culture around parenting is always going through these little sort of incremental shifts. But the pandemic was definitely just like a huge, dramatic overnight shift. That is 100% for me the biggest cultural change around parenting I've seen.
Yeah, and so your twins would have been, like, 1 when
Yeah,
that
they were 15 months when lockdown began.
so how did you navigate that? Because, I mean, freelance is if you're not writing, you're not getting paid
Yeah.
and or publishing things, you're not getting paid. So how do you navigate that with very, very small people?
So that it's interesting. I was just talking to another mom about this. I think that in some ways was the easiest point of parenting for me because my husband's a consultant. So he was fully employed, but he was not really doing much client work. So we didn't have the financial stress of him having lost his job or anything. But at the same time, he was much more free and was working from home for the first time, really,
Mhm.
at that point. I was very, very part-time. I was maybe working, like, 10 hours a week at that point, and so we really had so much family time, which was really, really nice, and, of course, collectively, we were going through something incredibly heavy and incredibly difficult, but I think within our home, it was kind of a nice, like, reset for, 2 busy, busy people who kind of got to slow down for the first time.
Yeah. And so what were some of the things that you noticed, like, in the writing piece of the pandemic? Not to say, like, tell walk me through your entire experience, but what were some of the things that you noticed that people were gravitating towards more?
I think moms hit a breaking point during the pandemic. I think that we came to a lot of really major realizations. One, that motherhood and fatherhood are different things. Two, that we had been ignoring the work that mothers are doing behind the scenes and within the home. I think that I always say that prior to the pandemic, it was like you had to put up this very, very opaque wall between your home life and your work life. And then the pandemic came and we had no choice. We just all had to kind of tear that wall down. And we all had to sort of blur the lines between home and work. And I think in doing that, we realized a lot of things. One, we realized that we hadn't been taking the work that mothers are doing seriously. Two, I think we realized that it wasn't just in our heads. I think a lot of us felt like this shouldn't be this hard because culturally, the conversation is just, yeah, you can have it all. And I think we finally collectively were like, "Oh, no, this is this hard for everyone. We're all drowning. We're all struggling. Why did it take us up until now to finally have the conversation about, like, why do kids get out of school at 3, but I'm still working until 6?" All these conversations that I think we just kind of buried within ourselves, and we just sort of tried to kind of, like, push through the problems individually. I think we all realized, like, "Oh, no, we're all feeling this."
Yeah, yeah, it's that mentality of, like, it's the way it's always been, so it's the way it's always gonna be,
Yeah.
came to a really beautiful crashing halt. And so as you've moved out of that, like, in terms of the writing and sort of experiences around that, what does that look like for you coming through the pandemic and then now? Now your kids are older, I'm assuming they're in school, and how does that all look for you?
How do I kind of structure my schedule or how do I approach?
How, just in terms of, like, going through the pandemic as a parent and realizing, these conversations need to be had and people, it's not a me thing, it's an everyone thing.
Mhm.
Like, do you notice that now that the kids are older, that they're in school, that they're sort of like I'll use myself as an example. My daughter yesterday went to the nurse's office and the nurse called me and I was on a call for work, and instead of calling my husband, because he's the next one on the list, she
Yeah.
just had my daughter wait in the nurse's office until I was finished my meeting. They didn't know I was in a meeting, but until I finished my meeting and I called back. And I think about that in terms of the pandemic context, right? Where we say, like, there's more than one person on your call list. Why are we not calling? So I wonder, like, do you notice things like that sort of reverting back to the way it's always been?
I kind of do. I think that there was a really dramatic pendulum swing, and then I think it's almost swung back in the opposite direction in some
Mhm.
ways. I think the discourse around motherhood has gone back to being a little bit toxically positive. I think that our attention has kind of gone away from fixing the systemic issues. I mean, there are definitely still people fighting that fight, and there are corners of the internet that are really devoted to talking about, all the stuff that comes with motherhood and all of the fundamental incompatibility between work culture and the school day, for example. But I think that we have kind of gone back to a place of burying our head in the sand in a lot of
Mhm.
ways and just sort of expecting moms to figure it out.
Yeah, it's this weird idea of, like, once you know better and you have that experience, and now it's just this collective, like, slide where you're saying, "We still have all this awareness." So it feels like sometimes that it's a doubling down on the hurt that comes from that. It's like, "No, I told you that it was a problem, and you said that this was something that we were gonna work on doing better, but now we've got people on national television talking about how grandparents really need to step up so that people can have more kids." And it's like,
Yeah.
"Wait, what?"
Mhm.
It feels like maybe the memo got shredded and what is happening?
Yeah, I mean, the return to office mandates. It's the perfect example of how, we learned so much about how we can make family life slightly more sustainable. We inched very, very slowly forward, just a tiny, tiny bit. The target's still way off in the distance, but we started to inch towards it. And now it's like, oh, we just took a step forward and now we're taking 3 steps back.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I wonder about what's gonna be the thing that finally gets it to change, because if a global pandemic doesn't sort of make you wanna light your hair on fire, I'm not entirely sure what it will take. Like, how do we organize enough people together and enough culture shift to actually make the changes that we want? Because I think that you're spot on, right? Like, we all know this is a problem. We all know that this has been a problem for a long time. How do we collectively pull enough people together to actually start to chip away at the problem?
Yeah, and I think the real catch 22 is that the only people who are advocating for mothers are mothers.
Yeah.
And the entire reason we need to be advocating is because mothers have too much on their plates. So, how do we carve out the space on our own plates to join the fight and to advocate and to come together when we're already drowning?
Mhm. Already drowning, and then now they're saying, "Okay, well, remote work doesn't work," which is not true.
Yeah.
Remote work doesn't work because we have a giant lease on this building and we need to have people in here so that we can have all of these pieces. I was in New York City a couple weeks ago and they were talking about the occupancy rate. The commercial occupancy rate is still so low post pandemic because companies restructured and they no longer needed these massive buildings. And so there's all this commercial real estate that is sitting vacant, and that can't work for the people that need the building to be filled. And so what are they going to do? And these ideas about actually having there be some sort of affordable housing built and converting these commercial spaces into micro apartments and things like that. And so on that trend, I'm like, "Well, that's a great idea. Why don't you do that?" So then we eliminate the space for people to be demanded to return to, and now put yourself in a position where we actually have to maybe make some changes and go forward in that direction.
Mhm.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, cost of living, like, all of these things swirl together. So, I'm preaching to the choir, I feel like, because you're writing these articles and about this stuff, is that cost of living, availability of childcare, return to work, motherhood and career, all of these pieces. Like, how do you not feel like kind of the sky is falling when you're writing about these things? Like, you see the pandemic happening, and then you see the how things are reverting back, and you're writing about this and you're putting these pieces out there. Like, how does it not feel overwhelmingly sad and frustrating?
It does, and then, what's frustrating on top of that is that you log on to social media and the discourse is, "Why are moms complaining so much?"
Mhm.
Why I don't know if you saw that there was this TikTok that went viral where this woman was like, "Why is it so normalized for mothers to complain?" First of all, it's not normalized because every time I log onto this app, I see a take that's similar to this one. When something is normalized, we're not consistently digging it up and talking about it. Secondly, because we're navigating a hellscape. I mean, it's really that simple. We are navigating a system that does absolutely nothing to support us. And we're told this is the greatest thing you'll ever do in your life. This is the greatest experience a woman can have. Enjoy every second. Don't complain. If you complain, guess what? You chose this. some of us didn't choose it, right? Like, let's look at the reproductive health climate right now too and take that
Mhm.
into account. But it's just this consistent invalidation because, like I said, nobody else is advocating for moms. So we're advocating for ourselves, but people are just too reductive and too simple. And the narrative around motherhood has just been baked too deeply into our culture that people think that any type of resistance or any type of advocacy is complaining.
Mhm. It's that nagging versus assertiveness
Yeah,
that we are forever trapped in, right? It's the, like, "Just make me a list. Just tell me what to do.
exactly.
I have done all of these things to the best of my ability that I can do, and everything else falls on your lap."
Yeah.
And when you
And
say, "I'm full," or whatever.
yeah, and it's interesting because, I am very tapped into the conversation around motherhood because of my work. And I absolutely see people who are talking about the things that need to change for mothers. Very rarely do I see somebody complaining about anything that's inherent to motherhood, right? Like I rarely see people complaining about their kids or even something that I think is worth expressing the realities of, like postpartum. It's more often, why is our system doing so little to take care of mothers? And, why are my kids randomly off school on a Wednesday when they haven't been in school for a full week all year and I'm still expected to go to work? And people will say, "Well, you could have planned it, like take a PTO day." How many PTO days do you think people have?
Right.
You know?
Well, I saw a thing somewhere, it was like, there are, like, 30 something PTO there's, like, 30 something between half days at school and days off of school and vacation weeks and stuff like that. It's, like, 30 days in the school year. It doesn't include the summer,
Mhm.
and but you only get 2 weeks of PTO.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to, so you just work for free for 2 weeks out of the year? It's bonkers.
Yeah. And, as a self employed person, like I circumvent a lot of these challenges. And quite frankly, I would make a lot more money if I didn't have to consistently circumvent them. There's a real privilege of being able to say that that's okay. For my family's bottom line, it is okay if I have to take a day off and forfeit whatever amount of money I would have made on that day. But even as somebody who talks about motherhood and thinks about motherhood all the time, both personally and professionally, I don't know what moms are doing and what they're supposed to do
Mhm,
because it's that much of a individual problem in this country that mothers are just expected to figure out. I don't know collectively what people are doing or how they're navigating this. And I'd really like to hear more from moms who are, more traditionally employed than I am. What are you doing? What do you
mhm.
do when at 6 a.m. you get a call from the school saying we're going to have a snow day and you hadn't set up any type of childcare? What do you do when, like we said, the number of days your kid is off completely outpaces your PTO? Or what do you do if your kid is sick and can't go to school, but you have to work? Like, I don't know. I don't know what people are doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and I think it's also too, like, the rise of freelance and entrepreneurship and consulting work and things like that. I think there's a lot of that that speaks to the fact that people may not necessarily be saying, "The reason I am leaving my, 9 to 5, 401k, health, medical, dental, all of that is because I wanna be a freelance person." It's like, I have the opportunity, like, I work for myself for exactly this reason.
Mhm.
I have the opportunity to do something that is within my skill set and within my profession, where I don't have to be in the hospital to do it. I don't have to be in a clinic, and I can do this from my home. I
Mhm.
created the job around the fact that I cannot have I need the flexibility for when my kids were young, for now, how old my kids are, all of that coming together. But I think that is a really interesting way that would be a really interesting topic to explore more of, because people aren't saying, "I'm doing this because I'm, like, girl bossing it. I'm
Mhm.
doing this because it's the only way that I can actually make 2 things to come together." But you're not
Exactly.
even making 2 things come together.
Yeah.
You're carving out of your financial your ability to earn as much as you possibly can within that time period. It's you're impacting your ability to go and do all of these other things, right? Like if your kids are in school and you can like go to a dentist appointment at lunch, you're not taking your kids with you to your dentist appointment.
Mhm.
Well, it's how do you make it all fit? And I would love to know the number of people that decide to go out on their own that is a direct correlation with motherhood over like this idea to like side hustle to the stars.
Yeah, totally.
That would be really there's a poll. There's a national poll right there. Like
Mhm.
how many people just got fed up with it and decided I am better off trying to figure out how to do this on my own because I'm basically figuring out how to do everything on my own anyways already.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about so what about you on like cuz we're and bothing this. What about you in terms of all of these pieces? Like I imagine it's different now that the kids are in school, but how do you fit you into the equation?
It really comes down to having a partner who actually parents and who actually, takes responsibility around the house. I think that's such a huge part of it. I'm honestly a little bit of a homebody, so the way I make time for myself is usually just watching a show, like watching reality TV, reading a book. That's kind of it, and I wish I had a more exciting answer, but
I don't think though that that's I don't think that there needs to be an exciting answer. Like I think it has self-care is based on self.
yeah.
And if I think that we get caught in this trap of like all of these things that you need to go and do and buy and see and all of that. And if that like if you're a homebody, you're not going on a trip with your friends because it's like, oh my God, I gotta go. I would rather be sleeping in my own bed. I'd rather be doing this stuff. So I don't think that there's a wrong answer to that. And I think that is an interesting piece of the whole puzzle. It's like, well, I have to do this to this degree in order for it to count that we sometimes get trapped in as well.
Yeah, we do. We've definitely commodified self-care as well as everything else.
Mhm. And so what do you have in the works right now? I mean, I don't know if you can like what do you in terms of like pieces or things, do you have like a sort of a trend that you follow or is it what comes out of, the media in terms of like what is rising to the top? Like how do you pick and how does that process go?
It's really all over the place. I have some deadlines that are monthly. So I have, a retainer client where I hand in a certain number of stories every month. I have some clients where I'm pitching stories and I'm waiting to hear back. I have some where I'm getting assignments from people. So it's all over the place. It's a little bit of everything. I will say that the pitching and waiting to hear back piece is far and away the hardest part of freelancing, especially right now. The media is not a great place to be. I'll just leave it at that and have a lot of thoughts that I can share offline, but
I mean, I especially like media and motherhood right now, like the
Mhm.
conversation has got to be a little bit of a lead balloon, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot going on right now that is making freelance work harder than it was before, even. And I can't help but think that that's a direct attack on mothers because, as we talked about, a lot of mothers go this way because traditional employment and motherhood just don't really work. I mean,
Mhm.
it takes an incredible amount of mental gymnastics to make that work, and then I think there's still just impossibilities baked in that even if you are, mentally managing every single thing, even if you have all the support in the world, it just kind of doesn't work if you have both parents traditionally employed in a 9 to 5 capacity.
Mhm. Yeah. I wonder about I now, now that you had said something, it's sort of like how do you make that work? Because you can't and also too, it's not even like I've got friends that their kids are older. They're not like 17, but they're old enough where in when I was a kid, you'd be able to walk home and let yourself in the door and, get yourself a snack and watch a cartoon and then your parents come home like an hour later or whatever, or you come home and grab a snack and go ride a bike around the neighborhood. But now
Yeah.
you can't even do that. Now
No.
I mean, someone's gonna call someone,
Mhm.
and now you're talking about, okay, on top of all of the things that I need to do for summer camp and school vacation camp and things like that, now you've gotta find aftercare or before care, and those lists are impossible. So how do
Yeah.
you make that work?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we have to think about summer camps when we're still wearing our puffy coats,
Mm,
it's a little bit ridiculous. And that, summer camps are wildly expensive and they're wildly complicated and they're wildly competitive to get into in a lot of cases. There is just nothing simple about approaching motherhood right
yeah. There's a camp that my kids have gone to in the past. They're not going to, but it's a day camp. It goes from 9 to 3, I
now.
think. It's 5 days a week. From the time that my oldest she's 12 now, from the time that my oldest went there, I think she was 7 when she went, and she only went for a couple years. I think it was like $275 a week, and I remember because 'cause I'd never sent a kid to day camp before. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." It was another, like, $50 for before care, so if you needed them there at 7 or 8, or I think it was 8, and then it was $50 for aftercare per day, so you're paying an extra $100 a day to
Yeah.
send them. It used to be that you signed up for camp in, I think it was February. I last year, 2024, got a notice that they were opening camp December 9th to sign up for summer 2025. And then 2 years ago, the last year that I tried to sign them up for camp, you have to be a member of it's a science museum. So you have to be a member of the museum. So you have to pay the museum membership fee, and then you have to get in order to get into the early sign-on part, and I missed the early sign-on part for one of my kids by 10 minutes, and the entire summer was sold out. So they have all these different age brackets. You sign up to pay all of that money for before care, after care, your camp dues, the membership, and it's sold out in 10 minutes. Like, how does somebody who doesn't have a membership, or someone who's like, "Oh, my summer plans fell through in terms of, like, this camp is not coming back. What do I do?"
Yeah. That's Yeah,
It's madness.
wild, and nobody's talking about it, and,
Right.
for a long time, even conversations like this weren't really happening. So and I think that a lot of people think that the way to avoid all of this is to just have one parent stay home. That is also a deeply flawed it's an issue that really doesn't get any attention. It's, 1, not accessible to the majority of families right now, and 2, even if it is accessible, the way we treat stay-at-home parents in our culture and the lack of protections that they have, it's insane. It's quite frankly, I mean, people will tell you you have to be financially independent, but they don't tell you that navigating a traditional 9 to 5 when you have children is nearly impossible, and they don't tell you what goes into self-employment. And then if, say, you decide to, go back to the stay-at-home parent option, there's still this narrative that that's just easy and that that's not work, and that is more than just an idea. That affects the way partners treat you. That affects the way society treats you. That affects the lack of social protections that are available to you. So there's just really no perfect way to do this.
Mhm. Yeah, I do think that that is a part of the conversation that has to be talked about more. It's this idea of like, okay, well, it's really hard to do this piece. It's really hard to work full time. It's impossible. It's impossible to work full time and show up in all the ways that you want to, or that you're being made to feel like you need to. Okay, so go part time or start your own thing, and then you have a whole host of other logistics that you need to take on top of this.
Yeah.
And then you're juggling that, right? You're juggling, like, the boundaries within home around your workday and what that looks like. Okay, well, that's too much. So then there's this concept or whatever, this assumption that, like, you just kinda quit and now you stay home. And it's, "Well, what do you do all day?"
Mhm.
You're like, "Well, what?" Like, what if you paid somebody to do what you're doing as a stay-at-home parent, there's value in what they do, right? Because they
Yeah.
are hired, but there's no value in you doing that because you're not paid. Why does a monetary exchange have to be made in order to indicate value of what you're doing?
Yeah, there's a woman on TikTok who is gaining a lot of traction, and her whole platform is saying being a stay-at-home mom is not hard.
Oh god.
Yeah, and then she will, completely contradict herself at every turn, and then she'll say, "If it's hard for you, it's just because your partner's not pulling his weight." Why are partners gonna pull their weight if we're gonna platform this idea that it's not hard? Because if it's not hard, why do you need somebody to step in and take on, any of the load when they're home, right? So, I think people just don't understand what they're really doing when they make these ideas that just seem like ideas. They really have wide-reaching implications.
Yeah, and especially too when you think about people how much access people have to a platform like that, right? So if you're someone who is feeling like this is really hard to do and it feels like an impossible task, and then you're on TikTok or whatever, and you come across this and it's like, well, it's just really not that hard. Then what do you feel? Like you feel further isolated. You feel further devalued because you're somehow not doing right with this thing that everyone tells you is really easy.
Yeah.
You okay? We
Yeah,
can
I thought I just heard something, but it's weird. I don't know if it's connecting to another set of iPods. That's really strange.
ghost iPod situation.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, no problem. Yeah, I think that's a really troubling concept. Troubling is not the word, but I'm, gonna keep it on the PG side, I guess, because it's still morning time here. But it's that concept of like you're already feeling bad enough. Where do you look to find people that you can identify with? And if people are stuck in the corners of the conversation or the awareness of it, then it feels worse.
Yeah, it's also I think we have to put a lot of the blame on our social algorithms because they're constantly rewarding these very extreme takes, and I think that's a huge part of the reason that this whole girl boss idea took off so much, that millennial women felt like they needed to just continue to hustle and to kind of push through all the barriers that nobody else was ever talking about or thinking about removing from their path. And now I think that's why we've kind of gotten stuck back in this idea of the martyr mommy and, the trad wife, like all of these very extreme ideas about how to be a good woman
Mhm.
that just have gained traction because our algorithms really reward everything that's extreme and all these extreme takes.
Yeah. And also too, along the life trad wife phase that I always think is incredibly interesting is that when they tell you that this is how you should be doing this, right? The thing that follows that or the thing that is tagged in that is their like storefront or their business piece, right? It's like you want to be like me, so you need to buy all these things from me, which means that they're not actually trad wifing it. They are portraying this role so that you will buy these things, so that you will look like that. But how are you going to have the money to buy those things if you're doing the things that they're doing? Like it doesn't 2 and 2 is not 17 here.
No, I wrote about the trad wife thing for Vogue, and it's the frustrating thing is that they are waxing nostalgic for the 1950s, right? But they're using this very modern form of technology to gain a level of financial independence, which, by the way, was not available back then to women.
Mhm.
So it's all just a complete facade. And I think it's a facade that has really, really deep implications, not just in terms of how women are viewed within the home or men are viewed within the home, but also, I don't want to get too political, but politically.
Yeah. Yeah, and 2, how many of these people that are in these positions of portraying the trad wife life are not I mean, how many people that do this for a living, although they're trying to tell you that it is just living, it's not for a living.
Mhm.
How many of these people already have these financial means to not have to earn an income? So how many so these people, like, if they had just set up a camera and showed their life. That's one thing to say, "Yes, I do. I identify with this trad wife lifestyle, and this is what I believe." But they're not. They're saying, "This is what I believe, and therefore you have to give up your money so that I become financially independent." This is the piece that, like, really irks me about this, is that somebody who is saying, "I want to feel like what that looks like, so I'm gonna buy my way into that, but I'm not actually ever going to feel that way because now you're taking on a persona versus figuring out what works for you." And that's this idea of, like, being stay-at-home mom, being a freelance, being a part-time mom, being a full-time mom, like, we're all doing our best, and then you have this person that sort of, like, stands on the soapbox and says, "I'm doing it right, and
Mhm.
if you don't look like me, sound like me, act like me, whisper to your children when you talk to them, like, give me a break."
Make your cereal from scratch.
That one cracks me up. I don't even know these people. I mean, but the I felt like this, so then I spent 3 hours making cereal that was made out of, like, beet juice and all of this stuff, and my kids just ate it up. I'm like, "No, no, they didn't. No, they did not. They did not."
And, I think that I have a little bit of an unpopular opinion on the making everything from scratch piece of it. I think it's wildly impressive. I think the fact that a lot of these women can do that, they can bake like this, they can cook like this, it's incredibly impressive. I also think we need to talk about the fact that if a man were doing that, we would call him a chef.
Yep.
Woman does it like she's just doing some silly little thing on her silly little social media and living this silly little trad wife life, and
Mhm.
no, there's actually a lot of work that goes into doing this.
Have you read, I mean, you wrote about this, so I'm assuming, but I read something about the trad wife life and people renting houses to go and film.
Mhm. I'm
So
sure.
they're not even in their own house, and
Mhm.
they just go and they have a blank slate. So you don't have kids there. You don't have, so you're not actually doing the thing that you're saying, right? Like, I couldn't film a how to bake this episode in my house because, like, there's a soccer ball flying across my kitchen. Someone like needs their butt wiped. Someone, it's like all of these things that are happening, and then you turn this on and it's like flowery music and someone's like, "My kids are just reading in their rooms." And you're like, "Aren't your kids like 3 and 5? Like, do they read? What is happening?"
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. There is
Mm,
nothing wrong with going to a place outside of your home and away from your children so that you can work, because that's what you're doing, you're
yeah.
working. But don't lie about it. Don't say that this is just me living my life and this is, when you're leaving major, major pieces of the picture out, which
Mhm,
is truly, I mean, it's something that's been going on for a long, long time, celebrities, influential people, business leaders who, when asked how they make their balance or their juggle or their lives work, they will completely leave all of those domestic supports out of the conversation. How frequently do you hear a famous woman asked, "How do you balance motherhood and career?" And how infrequently do you hear her say, "I have a nanny," or "I had a night
mhm.
nurse," or "I have someone who comes and cooks and cleans." We are so resistant to hearing those things, which I think is part of why they've gone under the radar for so long. But at the same time, people straight up lie.
Yeah, I think that's the new the flex of parenting, right? Is like you're trying to make everything look on the outside one way, but you're not acknowledging all of the scaffolding that makes it possible for you to put up the facade. Like, it's
Exactly.
not attached to anything.
Yeah.
I do remember Amy Schumer got an award. She was presenting, I think she got an award because it was during an acceptance speech where she thanked her nanny, and I remember that went everywhere because people were saying, you know, "I can't believe that she said this. This is amazing that she did it." It wasn't like, "I can't believe outrage." It was amazing that she did it because she's acknowledging that, and I think somewhere in the speech she was saying, like, "I can't do what I do. I wouldn't be able to work at this, whatever it was, without having the support, yes, of my partner, but also I have someone who helps take care of my kid so that I am able to go to work, so that I am able to do that. And it takes more than the 2 of us and, like, a well-balanced calendar to make this happen because we both her husband coincidentally, I think, is a chef, but we both are able to show up in our careers in ways that we want to and that work for us because we have outside support.
I think Melanie Linsky did that as well.
Mm. And that's always I feel like every time that happens, when you see it on an award ceremony or whatever, that's always like a double take, right? Like, you're sitting there on your phone, you're looking at something, checking your email, the awards are going on and they announce and then they get up and you read and you hear them give their speech and they're like and they thank somebody like someone who helped them that would traditionally be in the back row and you're like, "Wait a minute. Is
Mhm.
this it? Is this the moment where we start talking about this and acknowledging this?" Of course, that didn't continue on trend-wise, but it's really refreshing to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all the back pieces of it, and I think that's when we had to talk about that during COVID because you couldn't hide your mess in your closet anymore because your mess is on Zoom, then people really I feel like there was such a relaxed kind of vibe to the world when that was where we lived because people stopped having to work so hard to hold up the smiley face on the stick because everything is really hard. And now for some reason, we all decided that that was a better option than just showing up as our authentic selves.
Yeah. It felt like we all let out a primal scream in unison.
It's true. I think we all needed to, for
I think
sure.
so. I think we need to again.
Mhm. I know, that's what I wonder now is, like, could we get a primal scream group together and, like, what would that look like if it was in the park by my house? Like, back then, people would be like, "Oh, it's a group of moms who are just letting it rip." Now it'd be like, "What is happening? Is there something strange going on? Like, are
Yeah.
they okay?"
Yeah. You chose this. Enjoy every
Yeah.
minute.
Oh, yeah. I can't tell you how many times in the checkout I've had that. "They grow up so fast. Enjoy every second." And I'm like, "I enjoy most of the seconds. I don't have to enjoy this one."
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that I'm doing a bad job if I don't enjoy this particular second when we are having a conversation about the random things that get put on the bottom shelf of the grocery store checkout that like nobody wants their kids to have, but for whatever reason they put them down there so that your kids can reach them and then you can have this argument about eating the lollipop thing that you dip in the sugar that's been there since probably I was a kid because nobody buys those things and now you're in a full on, like, "Oh my god, I just wanna go home." Like, I just wanna go home and put,
Yeah.
like, the groceries away and do the next 75 things I have to do before the end of the day, but now I'm here, and then that person comes up and they're like, "You have to just enjoy every minute." Not
Yeah.
this one, Dolores. This isn't the minute. This is not the minute. You can have this minute. I bestow on you this minute because I don't want it.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
and speaking of the checkout line, like, I don't know if you've heard any of this conversation about should parents have to put the cart back after they go grocery shopping with their kids?
oh my gosh, please tell me about it.
Okay, so I don't even know how this started, but there's all these people who are talking about how, you should be able to put the cart back after you go to the grocery store. And it's a lot of the times it's someone with one child who's a baby.
Mhm.
They're like, see, I went grocery shopping with my kid and I put the cart back. And someone else will be like, well, I have four kids and it's not always safe to navigate a parking lot with four kids who are all trying to run in different directions. So sometimes I don't put my cart back. And I just feel like the missing piece of this conversation is like, why is a mom with four kids walking through a parking lot and a guy with his hands completely empty is just going to walk right by her and not offer to take it for her?
Mhm.
I think that is American parenting summed up perfectly. Why are people going to just walk by a mom who is struggling and trying to do the right thing? Because, yes, in a perfect world, you should put the cart back after you go grocery shopping, right?
Yep.
You see someone who's trying to do that, and you're just gonna walk by and continue with your life instead of saying, "Hey, it looks like you have your hands full. Can I take that for you?"
Mhm.
Right? Everybody's
100%.
wanting to interject and to say something when your kid is having a meltdown and they want you to enjoy every second, but nobody's actually there to free. They're there to tell you your hands are full, but they're not there to free up your hands ever.
Oh my god. Oh my god, you must have your hands full.
Mhm.
Like, no.
Yeah.
No, Steve. Just keep walking. The other place that I've seen this, and, like, we don't fly that often because there's 4 kids, and that's a lot, but I so we flew last year as a family for the first time, and we had 2 car seats. They're heavy. 2 car seats, and everyone had bags, and we're going through the airplane and all of this stuff. I am not kidding. My husband is 6 feet tall. He is a full-grown man, and he is carrying 2 car seats, and I thought that you could knock half of the people over with a damn feather. They were so impressed that this person is, like, doing the job, right?
Mhm.
I've got the kids that still need the car seat going down the airplane with me, right? Everyone that one of them is, like, thinking that every row is their row because they didn't know how to count and where the numbers were and all this stuff, and I am holding all of these their bags and my bags doing the pack mule thing, and people are like, "Oh, what a good dad."
Mhm.
What the
Yeah.
like,
Yep. Don't even get me started.
yeah, and then I get to the end, like, where we're going, and the flight attendant looks at me and looks at him and goes, "Can I hold your coffee while you put your stuff up?" It was the first person in this whole airport experience that said, like, "I see you. We're both doing something that is hard, and we're both trying to, like, use our arms 2 arms as though they are 8 arms." And this person was like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Thank you. Thank you so much." Meanwhile, it's like standing ovation for the guy in the back who is doing a great thing. I'm not gonna crap on that. Like, I don't wanna be carrying these car seats, but it's like, why do you have 2 different sets of expectations for people?
Completely. Completely. Yeah, my husband and I were just talking about this. He last week was out of town on a business trip and he missed his connection, so he was stuck an extra night, and that night one of my kids needed to go to the ER. So I take my kid to the ER in the middle of the night and come back and don't sleep and all of that. And then the kids had something at school that evening, and he flew in and he came straight to the school for the evening thing. And everyone was like, "How incredible. He came straight off of his flight." I'm here too, by the way.
Right? You're like, "You could put 2 weeks worth of clothing in the bags that are hanging out under my eyes right now because I
Yeah.
didn't sleep last night." I
Yeah.
know. That's that yeah, that just the way that the conversation is set up around so many of these things, it's like once you and it's that idea of like once you see it, right? I feel like in motherhood, it's like when you go from not having children and you can sort of look at this stuff on the outside and say, "Oh, I can see systemically or I can understand that, whatever." It's like you go into the hospital and you have a child and somebody hands you like x-ray glasses and you go out and you look at the world and you're like, "Are you kidding me? This this is this thing, like, now you have such a visceral acknowledgement of all of these things that on the surface, you can say, "Oh, this is not great. Like, I don't love this setup." But now you're like, "Oh, me, you, the world, what is happening?"
Yeah. I got into a little bit of a TikTok argument with a dad because, I had shared something about Working Moms Day, which was a few weeks ago. And he's like, "We don't ever get this kind of recognition." First of all, we don't want it. I don't want Working Moms Day on the calendar.
Mhm,
I don't want you to put Working Moms Day as an opportunity for everyone to post their little graphic about how incredible working moms are when mothers who work outside the home don't have paid leave. They don't have access to childcare. They don't have flexibility. They don't have any of the structural supports that they need.
mhm,
When we're still drawing a bold line between the mothers who work outside the home and the mothers who work inside the home and effectively telling them that they are not working, right? They're not the working moms. We don't want this. And by the way, if you want to be celebrated, take your kids to the grocery store
yeah,
because people are going to applaud. People are going to tell you you're doing a great job. People are going to tell you this generation of fathers is so incredible. Like, you want to be celebrated, tons of opportunities.
yeah, yeah, and also, on that is that Wasn't International Women's Day on daylight savings?
What I it may have been, yeah.
It wasn't even a full 24 hours? Like, that's peak. That
Yeah,
is just the peak
well,
of the you only get 23 hours. Happy whole day, but you actually only get 23 hours. You don't even get all 24. I I didn't put 2 and 2 together, and I heard somebody say that, and I thought, "That really tracks in a big
yeah,
way."
yeah,
Oh my gosh. It is. But I do think it's important. Like, I think it's important to have this conversation as many times as possible, and I think it's important to have it in as many different platforms and as many different settings because there are people out there that are doing the work to highlight this, and there are people out there that are writing about this and that are putting these conversations out there so that people can say, "Hey, I identify with this. Hey, I think this is important." Like, and there's some organizations that are growing to a national level, right? Moms First, Chamber of Women, or Chamber of Mothers, those kind of organizations that are helping to say, okay, we know this is a problem and we want to have the topics, but we also need to start thinking about policy and we need to think about different ways to have that happen. So I could have this conversation 1,000 times
yeah,
and with 1,000 different people, and everyone is gonna identify with some parts of it and maybe not others. So it's more is better.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. So can you let everyone know where they can find you and read all of your work? I don't
Yeah,
know if that yeah. Yeah, let them know where they can find you. Read all
you
about you.
find me at Zara Hanawalt, first name, last name on Instagram or TikTok. My website has been under construction for some time now, so hopefully it is coming soon, but it's just about trying to find a little bit of time to get that all together. So yeah, pretty soon, zarahanawalt.com will be up and running and updated.
That's awesome. And I think that too, like having a collection where you have all of those pieces in one place can
Mm,
help because I think that people are really looking for someone to be holding a flag that says, "Yeah, no, I totally see you and what you're doing," and it
yeah,
is really hard and acknowledging.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.